Good morning, Commissioners.
Hi, Mr.
Morning.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 9 a.m. I'm going to call to order the Board of Fire Commissioners for Washoe County. At this time, Vice Chairman, will you lead us in the salute to the flag, sir?
My pleasure.
All right, Madam Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Bob Lucy, Chair.
Here.
Von Hartung, Vice Chair.
Here.
Alexis Hill via phone.
Here.
Kitty Jung via phone.
I'm present, but I can't hear any of you.
Can we fix Commissioner Jung's audio? All right, Commissioner Jung there, she's working on it for you. Thank you,
Jeannie
Madam Clerk.
Herman. Here. Sorry. Fire Chief Charles Moore.
Here.
Deputy District Attorney Nate Edwards.
Present.
I'm Kathy Smith, Chief Deputy Clerk. So you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, with that, we will go open to item 3. Chief.
Item 3 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners' agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole.
All right, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment signed in this morning?
We do not.
All right, seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment and move on to item 4. Mr. Fire Chief, it is Commissioners and Fire Chief announcements.
I have 2 announcements, Mr. Chairman. First, happy holidays to everyone, but unfortunately I need to temper that with some sad news. Former Fire Chief Jean LeBlanc of TMFPD passed away recently. Chief LeBlanc was the fire chief for TM in the 1980s, early 1980s. And I understand his services will be sometime in January, yet to be announced. But if a moment of silence would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. And so I will ask for a moment of silence in the memory of Chief LeBlanc. Thank you, everybody. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 5 is consent. Items A, B, C, and D.
Actually, Chief, before we jump into consent, is there anything from, I need to ask the Commissioners if they have anything for their announcements this morning.
Sorry, I've got to hit
That's all right.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Vice Chairman.
So, Chief, open burning is allowed now,
Yes, for the month of December.
okay? And can you just give us a brief, just a quick overview of how someone can get a burn permit?
Certainly. They can log into our website, go to our website. There's a link to get a permit. You just fill in your information, your property, address, and the computer will tell you whether or not you qualify. We are asking people to have their fires extinguished before noon.
Okay.
And there is a phone number to call each and every day to make sure that the winds are going to be appropriate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Commissioner Jung or Commissioner Hill, do you have any announcements or questions?
Merry holidays.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Jung.
No announcements for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thanks, Commissioner Hill. All right. Chief, we're on to our consent agenda now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 4 consent items under number 5, A, B, C, and D.
All right. Commission, is there any questions on either any of the items under the consent agenda or any discussion further? Seeing
Chairman?
Seeing none.
I'm sorry, motion to approve?
Vice Chairman, I have a motion to approve. I have a second from Commissioner Herman. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on the consent agenda?
We do not.
All right. Seeing no public comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously on the consent agenda. Chief, item 6.
Item 6 is the Fire Chief's report. I'll ask Chief Eisenhagen if he would mind giving you a rundown on green waste. We had another very successful year with lots of people using the service. And I might call attention to a letter from Southwest Vistas, who was very complimentary about the program and particularly our staff that worked that day.
Saw that.
Welcome, Chief Eisenhagen.
Division Chief, Truckee, Meadows. We have concluded our fall green waste program for 2021. The numbers are up on the board. Altogether, we collected just under 1,100 loads. If you include the spring collection dates, which were at 275, we're at about 1,350 loads for the calendar year, which equates to about just under 11,000 cubic yards and 700,000 pounds of waste that was collected.
Unbelievable. That's fantastic, Chief Eisenhagen. Any questions for Chief Eisenhagen?
Not on that, no.
No.
Thank you.
Great job.
I would mention, Mr. Chairman, that Chief Eisenhagen's done a great job in expanding the program to other communities. We just, when we rolled this program out, we were just Washoe Valley and Silver Lake, and now we've taken it directly to a few other communities, which again makes it a lot easier for our constituents to build.
I have to say, this has probably been one of the smartest programs TM has ever taken on. And Chief Eisenhagen, I have to thank you for your leadership over the last year, really taking this and really running with it. The Green Waste Program is tremendously beneficial, not only for the community in regards to getting rid of that debris, that loose debris that causes those fire hazards, but it adds a level of community that we haven't seen before either. And I do think that it is multi-tiered in its benefit to the community. And Chief Moore and Chief Eisenhagen, thank you very much for your continued diligence on bringing this program and working on it. I think all the community is very happy with it. And it is, the benefits are tremendous. So thank you very much. All right. Chief, we are on to item 2, which is a 6.2, which is a dispatch transition update.
I'll ask Chief Kukulis to give you an update. We go live tomorrow with the transition to REMSA dispatch.
Chief Kukulis.
Good morning. For the record, Alex Kukulis, Deputy Fire Chief. Yes, as Chief mentioned, the long-awaited dispatch transition is scheduled to happen tomorrow morning at 0900. A little caveat to that is that's subject to some flexibility if there's any kind of active incidents or anything going on at that time. We obviously won't transition if there's something going on. But otherwise, we have a pretty robust contingency plan and process planned for tomorrow. Hopefully everything will go off without a hitch, but we know that there's certain elements that are going to have to be tested throughout the day. So it's planned to be an all-day process. It may wrap up a little bit earlier, but we have had all the technological components installed, tested, except for a couple little things that are non-essential items, but those can't actually happen until after we make the transition and go live. I went there yesterday, and we tested the process from A to Z with staff, and it was successful. We're going to continue some of that training and testing today, as well as after we go live with additional REMSA dispatchers. We've notified all of our regional partners throughout northern Nevada and even Tahoe and Truckee areas, so they're aware of all the details and what will happen, and we'll close the loop with them after it's all successfully completed. We also had a meeting last week with Reno, Sparks, and Washoe PSAP managers to address any of their questions and concerns. I think we've managed to address most of those. Some of those are actually unrelated to our transition, but just the inner workings between them and REMSA. So I believe that we're on the right path there. And as far as tomorrow goes, myself, Chief Kettering, Captain Ackerson, some of our staff will be over at the REMSA facility. As the transition happens, we'll also have a liaison up at Washoe County Dispatch. All the IT staff is going to be working on their components and on standby throughout the day. So we take it very seriously. We know there's a lot at stake here, but I'm pretty confident in the process at this point. So again, we have contingency plans if anything goes sideways. Hopefully we'll be able to work through things, but if not, we have a rollback process too in place. So that's the update, unless there's any questions.
All right. Commissioners, any questions in regards to dispatch, the transition? Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Jung?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right.
I say keep going.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Jung, Commissioner Hill. Chief, I think we're on to item 3.
Item 3, Chief Eisenhagen, if there's anything you want to add, but the board may recall that last year we did pile burning above in the Galena area that was actually NDF piles. We still have a few left, And the Forest Service is going to do some burning, so Chief Eisenhagen will let you know what's going to happen.
Great.
Again, for the record, August Eisenhagen, Division Chief. As Chief Moore said, the Forest Service reached out about 6 weeks ago and sent us their pile burn plan. They are planning to do pile burns in the Hobart and Little Valley area, Whites and Thomas Creek, and Dog Valley. It's on their own land. They notify us and all of our chief officers daily if they're going to do it. They haven't started this season. It was just a preliminary heads up. And then if the board recollects, last year, we brought it in front of you, NDF's plan to burn piles along Joy Lake Road and Galena Creek Park. There are still 2 acres to burn above Galena Creek Park. They reached out for our support again. We put the same stipulations on it as the board requested last year, meaning Truckee Meadows overhead on site, as well as aircraft on standby.
Awesome. Any questions for Chief Eisenhagen in regards to the control burns? All right. Thanks, Chief. All right. And then, Chief, do you have anything in regards to the critical calls or review for an item B?
Nothing to mention unless there's questions from the board on item B.
All right. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alexander.
So, Chief, I recognize that this is a snapshot in time, specifically October. But I'll tell you what would be helpful for me on just some page is to just have and I don't need a month by month. This tells me each month. But what I'd like to have is a cumulative total of mutual and auto aid. This month, it's pretty obvious, except for Pyramid Lake, which we support. That makes complete sense because we've given them equipment and we're paying them to do that for us. So it's not just a paper agreement, so to speak.
Right.
But we're upside down here. Automatic aid, Reno 13 received, given 13, received 5. Automatic aid, City of Sparks, given 23, received 9. I recognize that other months, it may, sort of the funnel may flip. So what would be very helpful for me in the future is if we could just have, just a cumulative total for the year so that we know how many responses were either given or received in either mutual or auto aid to the various jurisdictions. Exactly the way I love the way you have it laid out here. Maybe we can just compress it and have one more line for a cumulative total.
Absolutely, that'll be easy to do.
Thank you. That'd be helpful for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And, I think the Vice Chairman sparks a pretty interesting discussion. I'd like this board to consider in the oncoming year discussions in regards to how can we better and more efficiently work together with both the City of Reno, City of Sparks, the airport, and identify ways of moving forward. We've talked about, legislatively moving forward with automatic aid but I think there's time now to have a discussion about a potential regional understanding and how we approach that. And so I would like to bring those types of concerns and issues not only to the board, but start having those discussions with all of our regional partners to see if we can identify a functional way forward that we can truly utilize better the services for the betterment of the community. Not just identify, because I have to say, since our last fire board meeting, I was at the scene of an accident at the bottom of Zalezi Lane and Arrow Creek Parkway, where Zalezi Lane and Arrow Creek Parkway join. That intersection happens to be at the boundary for the City of Reno and unincorporated Washoe County. And the accident involved 2 young gentlemen, ages 16 and 17, and a young woman, ages 21. The 21-year-old woman ran the light. She was T-boned by the 2 young men traveling on Arrow Creek Parkway and flipped her car. And both cars totaled. The Volvo or the Subaru ended up on its roof. She was able to, fortunately, the young lady was unharmed and was able to get out of the car, but the airbags deployed and all the kids walked away from the accident. However, if it wasn't my friend's children, I wouldn't have been on the scene and I wouldn't have been able to call our staff to get there. Reno was dispatched because they thought it was a Reno call, and it was dispatched to both RPD and our RFD. And their closest engine came from over off of Longley Lane, I believe Station 6, correct? And that's off the other east side of the airport all the way to Arrow Creek. So quite about 13 minutes to respond to a flipped car, plus two officers. One came from up by the university, another one came from Midtown area to respond to an accident that was truly in Washoe County's jurisdiction. When 36 was just in station up the street, could have been there in 2 or 3 minutes. We had deputies that were stationed at Galena and could have been there quicker than Reno. And so these children, had they been truly injured, would have been suffering for quite some time. And it's those types of accidents that are disappointing to me, not from a standpoint of whose line it is and what kind of services that we, at the level that we do, fight over this type of discussion with our regional partners when it shouldn't be. It's about life and safety. And we need to be able to respond to everything as quickly as possible, closest engine, AVL. And so I would really challenge this board in the year 2022 to really take on the discussion of how do we move forward with a regional plan? What does that look like? How can we make it functional for not only our partners and truly put some effort into identifying that path forward? So those are my comments. I think that the vice chairman is absolutely correct that to even look at a report like this is great, but it doesn't serve us any benefit when we should be just dealing with it. So, Chief Moore, I have you signed in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was my intent in January to follow up on the structure fire that happened on September 4th. That was just 1,000 feet away from our fire station, yet City of Reno was responding from Moana. And the only reason we knew about that fire in a timely way is my captain went to the kitchen and saw the smoke column. Right. I think the board would be shocked to see the number of responses where, for both agencies, we could respond, paramedics within a quarter mile, sometimes even across the street. And it doesn't happen because of this need to, not from us, but some sort of jurisdictional autonomy can't be breached to save people's lives and to ease their suffering when they need government to help them. I think that I have engaged my peers as far as I can, and at this point it's going to, unfortunately, I've done what I can. I haven't made the progress that I would think that reasonable people would see the data and say, yes, we should do this so the public is not harmed. But I think it's going to take the electeds to have conversations using data to support any arguments pro or con. But there is a real problem in our community when we can't send a paramedic across the street because of a jurisdictional boundary.
Agreed. Thank you, Chief. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to your point, and Chief, and I think that this is pretty clearly demonstrated when you look at the automatic aid given to Sparks. It's 23. Sparks is a much smaller jurisdiction, but I know we respond when they need us, and especially out in North Sparks where Station 46 is located, and it works well. And I'm proud of that. People don't care who shows up. They just care that somebody shows up. You know, when a truck shows up, they don't look on the side to see if it's Sparks Fire or see if it's TM. They do not care, or Reno for that matter. They don't care. All they care is that somebody showed up. And again, so I'm really proud of what you've done here with the City of Sparks. It works I'm going to use the word seamlessly, but I mean, I know that there's probably some glitches here and there, but it works really well, and it's pretty obvious and substantiated by the numbers in this report. So thank you for that, and thank you. That's a great point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Commissioner Jung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will be bringing this up in our next meeting, but it is appropriate to this meeting and this issue, and that is my concern about the fact that we have all this ARPA money, which we will be getting an update in the next meeting, as I said, of which fire agencies are eligible and need to get, their piece of this pie. And what my concern is, we need to be talking to the people that control those purse strings sooner rather than later, so we don't, any of us inadvertently, do a major transformational capital improvement without coordination with others that then becomes the reason, as I've lived through for actually 17 years, because I worked at the city of Reno then as a liaison for the two most active electeds on the board. And it becomes another reason why we push it to the end and say, well, we need to go to the end life. We invested $10 million. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy, and if this needs to be a formal motion or something behind the scenes or one of our favorites, a special meeting, I think we need to start working now to be in the rooms with the people that are counting the money so that we can coordinate and probably get more bang for our buck. And that goes back to something I will be bringing up when we get our presentation on the ARPA disbursements. Let's make sure, and I'm sure staff is doing this, but I don't know this. Let's make sure that we are also looking like, what is the state going to allocate? Because if we end up overfunding one area or and then we're inevitably underfunding another area and duplicating, it's such a waste of this. And this is the people's money. So I think Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to get in there and make this my life's work. If you so choose, or the vice chairman chooses, because I'm always concerned about the fact somebody will outlay on accident or strategically a ton of dough, and then that becomes us, we're hobbled then because it doesn't make financial sense. And here's the other thing I got to throw in there. The CARES campus would have never happened without this federal infusion of money. We have money right now that has always been the hurdle in this community to do anything transformative. Now we have it. So if you want to regionalize, there will be no time like today. And every day that goes past, we're losing time on the ability to have the resources and the will to go into a full regionalization. So I'm sending myself to the slaughter if you so choose, Mr. Chairman. Just have me as a tool in your back pocket. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner John. I appreciate it. All right. Seeing no further comments this morning in regards to the chief's report or anything else in the monthly report and statistics, we'll move on to item 7. Chief? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 7 is the district's annual audited financial statements, and Ms. Vance will give you the presentation.
Good morning, Ms. Vance.
Good morning, Commissioners. Cindy Vance for the record. And I do also have Kurt Schlicker from, he is the partner in charge of the audit for Eide Bailey here, if we have questions. I'll go over this briefly, and I can dive in deeper if you'd wish.
All right.
Hopefully you guys all got a copy of the financial statements, the printed copies and the digital ones. Okay. The general fund, which is our main fund. Well, first I'll start with financial statements. We did receive an unqualified opinion, which is the highest opinion that the profession provides. The recommendation to accept the financial statements does include rolling encumbrances. Those are open purchase orders that were approved in last fiscal year 21's budget into fiscal year 22's budget. $450,884 in the general fund and $453,440 in the capital fund, and the list of those is attached. Also attached in your package is a letter from the auditors that is the required communications. The general fund it's on page 43, and that is our working fund. That is the standalone part that doesn't include the vacation sick fund and the stabilization fund, which is rolled together when it comes to the GAAP presented funds. So the revenue budget for our general fund was 33.9 million, and our actual was 37.3 million. That is 10% over their final budget, and it is an 11.6% increase over prior year of 33.5 million. Some of the biggest increases, of course, are C-Tax. That was 15% over prior year and 33% over the budget, which we had budgeted low in relation to COVID, but it ended up being one of the highest year ever. Other items included in the revenues is our new NV Energy agreement, SAFER grants. We started ambulance transfers, a fuels program with NDF in relation with the NV Energy fuels program, and collecting permits, building permits and prevention. So that's part of our growth. Our expenses were under budget. The budget was 36.9 million, and their actual was 35.2. And it's about 4.6% under budget. And it is an increase about 17% over prior year. And those programs, that SAFER grant, the ambulance services, and the growth in the fuels are the reason for that. Okay. We did have transfers from the general fund of 731,000, 500 to capital, 231,000 to sick and annual, leaving a net revenue over expenditures of 1.4 million. Okay. The emergency fund on page 45 is our major special revenue fund. This one had some significant differences from prior year. This, we never know. It's not a consistent basis because it is to address with emergencies. But we recognized revenues of $731,000. We had to defer $1.8 million of revenues. Those are receivables that are out, which aren't collected within 60 days of year end, so we don't get to record them as revenues against our expenditures, but the expenditures are there. Our expenditures were $2 million, and just over $2 million. Prior year was only $609,000, so it's a 240% increase in expenditures. So that did end up in a deficit balance of $42,000 because we deferred our revenues. We did a transfer at the beginning of the year, and we're working on increasing our collection speeds in that fund. Okay. The Capital Projects Fund. The district did issue long-term debt of $2.1 million. And that was in relation to facilities for Station 37 in Hidden Valley and buying property in Washoe Valley. And the capital projects balance ends at 3.6 or 3.7 million, which will be rolled for use in the fiscal year 22. 900,000 of that is restricted for facilities out of that bond. Total expenditures were 6.5 million, and those include the purchase of an air exhaust system, vehicle lifts, radio refresh, 2 ATVs, 3 chippers, property for Station 37, fleet manager vehicle, 5 pumper engines, final payments on the refurbishing of brush trucks, and 3 Type 5 brush trucks. So lots of purchases there. We do also have a few other funds. Our vacation sick fund rolls up into the general fund for presentation on the financial statements, but it is also discreetly presented. That ended with a balance of $239,000 rolled over for this year, which is a decrease of $293,000, which is, we did compensated absence payouts of just almost $300,000 last year. That's when people retire, that is their vacation sick, comp time benefits that are paid. Our current estimated balance of those compensated absences is $6.3 million. So that is one of the funds that I do want to continue to keep watch on, because to fund those growing balances, we're going to need to transfer more money. And we do have some transfers scheduled for fiscal year 22. Okay. We do have a stabilization fund, which has, let's see, just over, I think just over $500,000, sorry, $642,000. And that can only be used if there's a significant decline in revenues, but that's a kind of a safety net fund. And then we opened up a new debt service fund to account for annual debt payments, and we transferred $630,000 into that to pay the principal and interest on the two debts that were open in fiscal year 21, and we have a third debt now as of fiscal year 22. And then the last fund that we have is the Workers' Compensation Fund, which is an internal service fund. That fund only pays for workers' comp claims in relation to heart and lung claims from employees that were with the city of Reno for our proportionate share. And that had a significant increase in claims payments, and that was $143,000 paid last year compared to only $20,000 in the prior year, which also makes our estimate increase on our future liabilities from $1.4 million to $1.9 million. It's hard to say if that was just an unusual year, but with these employees, we always will have an obligation, since heart and lung will always can come back even after the employees have left the fire service. So if they do have a heart and lung claim, we may have a liability for them. The other items on there, the notes include more details. A couple of the items that I'd like to point out, of course, are OPEB, which is our other post-employment benefits. Those pay for our medical benefits on retirees. That increased by $1.8 million. We paid $651,000 towards that last year, and we continue to increase that amount, and we're working with the actuaries to get back to a good funding way so we can get back to 80% coverage, because right now we're down to about 52%. There are some changes on how they value it, and we're hoping to work with them to come up with a plan to bring that back up. Our pension liability did increase from $32.8 million to $35.2 million, and that's a liability that we have no control over reducing. That's related to our portion of PERS, and we can only pay what is owed in that year. So that liability will increase without being able to decrease. And then on our financial statements, you will see for the first time, we have debt of $5.9 million currently. Okay. So that's a summarization of the financial statements. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, any questions in regards to the financials?
For
All right.
us or the auditor?
I don't think we have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vance. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So this is for possible action to adopt the audited financial statements for the year end as presented. I'm looking for a motion. Oh, is there any public comment?
There is not.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing no public comment. And looking for a motion to accept the audited financials.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman.
motion to adopt
I have a motion.
as listed.
I have a second from Commissioner Herman. We've called for public comment, and seeing no public comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all commissioners voting. All right. Chief, that takes us to item 8. I don't believe there is a reason or need for a closed session today. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
So we will not open 8 today. That takes us to 9. This is our final commissioners and fire chiefs announcement. Chief, do you have anything final?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to let the board know that in January we'll be coming to you with some master planning concepts, particularly how we move forward on the consolidated Washoe Valley Station and Apple. Our plan is to hire the same architect and start the construction at the same time and use the same design for both of those stations for efficiency of architectural fees and efficiency of construction process. Apple is all on board with that, but there are some other master plan topics we'd like to go through it north to south, east to west. It may take us about 45 minutes to an hour, so I may need the full 2 hours for a meeting next month.
Okay. Great. All right, thank you, Chief. Commissioners, is there anything further from any commissioners? Going once, twice? Okay. Closing that, we will go to our final public comment. Madam Clerk, is there anybody signed in for public comment?
Yes, I'd like to call Mr. William Stewart.
Mr. Bill Stewart?
Good morning.
Nice
How's
to
everybody today?
It's good to see you. Happy holidays, sir.
Nice to see you. Merry Christmas. William T. Stewart for the record. So I've been a resident of Washoe County for 25 years now. And the comments you guys have made, I implore you to work together regionally to provide and sustain a safe, secure, and healthy community. You say it on your wall. The accident that you just described is a typical call that people don't probably hear about in the news, and that's something that we need to do a better job of. I know, being a retired, working in the fire service for close to 22 years, we got to do a better job, and that means working together with elected officials, public officials, power companies, water companies, developing relationships with people so we know what we can do for the future. We're going to have more people moving here. We're going to have more calls for service. We're going to have bigger fires. Next summer is going to be a huge problem. National Weather Service has already said it's going to be a huge problem. These are things that you guys can address, and it is incumbent upon all of you to work together with your other local officials to figure out how that's going to happen. City of Sparks, the City of Reno. I've talked to the City of Reno. We've already started doing some work with them so far as green waste removal. I think that's one way we can start. I mean, Chief Augie's already done a great job doing a defensible space and clearing out a bunch of stuff. There's so much more that can be done. And those calls, if we don't learn from the past, we're bound to repeat it. And so those are one of the things that we want to talk about, is making sure that we can go forward, having closest resources, AVL, you talk about all these things. They've been talked about for years. The Blue Ribbon Report, all the reports that are on the shelves probably in your guys' offices. When are we going to put those plans into action? Commissioner Jung talked about it. The money's available, whether it's regionalization, whether it's working with other public officials, working with our state elected officials, our federal officials, money that's coming down the pipe. I've sat here for years and almost begged you guys to figure this out. We all have children. Most of us already have them grown. My kids are driving, and it concerns me just because of the scenario you just put out. So how do we fix it? I'm here to help whatever way I can. That's why I'm doing the green waste stuff. That's why I'm working for Wilderness Forestry. That's a small thing that I can do to help, hopefully in the future, to prevent large catastrophic wildfires. We're working with Chief Moore and developing a program. I think we can streamline that across the county as well as the western United States to try to make sure that these big fires that do come, we do something proactively and work ahead of the curve instead of behind it. So I just thank you for your time. I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for your expeditious request to get this done. Every year, it seems like the same conversation is being had over and over again. Let's not be government and kick it down the road again. God bless. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. All right, seeing no further public comment, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned from the Fire Commission. We will be back at 10 a.m. for the regular Fire County Commission meeting.